Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is talk about the data that I received from my survey. My survey is called Ideas for Integrating 21st Century Skills, and it specifically focuses on the 4 C's. So critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. I know that there's a lot of people that think there's a lot more 21st century skills, and there are, but this is commonly 4 focus areas when you talk about these skills. So my data shows that in response to the question, which option below illustrates how you feel about teaching the skill of critical thinking, especially as it relates to technology, 53% of the respondents thought that they said, I feel like I could use more training when it comes to critical thinking, especially as it relates to news media and information literacy. Everyone else actually said, I feel confident in teaching critical thinking. I currently have all the tools that I need. So when it comes to technology, I think that that really shows that about half of the population who answered my survey really do feel pretty confident. The other half feels like they could just use a little bit more training, especially as it relates to news media. My next question says, discuss roadblocks that keep you from allowing students to increase the skills of communication in your classroom. For example, you might say something like, I don't have enough tables to create groupings, or not all of my students have the needed technology to communicate effectively outside of school. So this was one where respondents were writing in their answers. All of the people that answered this question said that they want students to be able to have access to more consistent technology. So a lot of people are worried that after we return to school, that some of the technology that was loaned out to students won't be available to those students anymore. A lot of people worry about students having access to technology once we're back in school. So really everybody that responded to this question said they want students to have access to simply more actual hardware technology, so actual computers, and to get closer to being one-to-one as a school and a district. The next question says, list at least 3 ways you can use online tools to create opportunities for students to collaborate with each other. Most people talked about various apps that they could use. A lot of people talked about Google Slides. A lot of people talked about Padlet. A lot of people talked about just using kind of various tools in the Google Suite to collaborate. So there were a whole variety of answers there. But for the most part, I didn't, a lot of people kind of talked about using Flipgrid as well. So really resources that I have heard of. I didn't really quite hear anything new. But for teachers that maybe don't use some of those tools, it would be a good opportunity to look at the answers to those questions. My next question states, how confident are you in your ability to create opportunities for students to showcase their creativity and demonstrate educational standards using online tools? So this was a Likert scale. It says not very confident, slightly confident, somewhat confident, fairly confident, and completely confident. Most people actually wrote kind of like fairly confident or somewhat confident. So I saw that I think a lot of people feel like they don't understand how we can integrate creativity and all the standards. So we know it's really easy to give students a test with all the standards that they can demonstrate, but it's really hard to weave all of those expectations and all of those standards into an actual creative project. And I think people would like more input or more instruction or training on that. The last question is, list at least one idea that you have for your content area that integrates creativity using online platforms and educational standards. So all of my answers here varied because there were people from different disciplines, but a lot of people kind of talked about using Padlet once again to kind of allow students to have choice in what they do, but then they can still share that for everybody regardless of what platform they use to make their creative product.
So for my survey on technological readiness and needs, I focused a lot on the vision statement because it's a need that I think that my district really has, and it's something that I think would provide a lot of guidance in an area where maybe we could use a lot of growth. So the first thing that I asked outside of like grade level and content area was, do you think your district has a clearly communicated educational technology vision statement? And I primarily had teachers within my district and specifically within my school fill this out. And the responses were yes, no, somewhat, and other. And 57% said yes. They thought that there was a clearly communicated educational technology vision statement. And then the rest of the respondents actually said no. The next one says, my district provides adequate technological resources, and it was a Likert scale of strongly disagree and strongly agree. Most of them were on the neutral to disagree end. I know that I've talked about this before in previous assignments, but our district hasn't had an increase in technology budget since 2005, so those results don't surprise me at all. The next one says, my district clearly communicates how technology usage in the classroom should enhance meaningful learning, both in content and pedagogy. And about 25% of people said agree, so they were kind of in that neutral, like the 4 spot. About 25% of people said they were neutral, and then the rest were kind of spread out throughout the rest of the numbers. I think personally, I fall under, if we're kind of looping back to that first question about is there a clear vision statement, from the conversations that Brendan, Lindsay, and I have had, we are not aware of one, and there's one that's not clearly identifiable on any of the district literature, and it's not used. If there is one, it's not posted and it's not clearly disseminated to staff, and so I think because of that, it's not clear how technology is expected to be used to enhance delivery of content. The next one says, I know how to successfully integrate technology in my lessons to improve student learning outcomes. This one was more on the positive end of the spectrum, so the majority of respondents were at a positive, so they were at the 4 or 5 range. And I think that does speak to, I work with a lot of young teachers and a lot of adaptable teachers, and relatively young and adaptable teachers, and I think that they're, despite the lack of clear vision from a holistic standpoint, I think that they are able to adapt and have learned a lot of new technological skills, and I also think that they're really good at finding resources, especially when things like, even though we're not a one-to-one school and we don't have laptops and things, I think that most of my colleagues are good at making the most of the resources that are readily available. And the last 2 questions were short answer. One was, what do you think would most improve your district's educational technology vision and corresponding implementation of the vision? What would you change if you were able? And do you think your district is preparing students to be 21st century college and career ready? And a lot of kind of the similar responses for those were just about how the vision would trickle down, and most people said that they would like to have some type of vision statement, so that way the technological usage in their own classes feels less piecemeal and more like part of an orchestrated whole. And then a lot of people also kind of use that to go off of for 21st century college and career readiness. In order for us to actually prepare our students for the future, we need to have a systemic implementation and expectation of those usage and of those technology skills for them to be prepared for the world outside of our high school walls. With your recommendations.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend, based on my survey results, that the high school leads a professional development session so that teachers can feel more competent when they're trying to employ the 4 C's, the 21st century skills. And then secondly, I'm going to recommend that central office revisits the possibility of making the district, or at least the high school, go one-to-one with every student getting a device.
So my recommendations are that the district is going to need to establish a clear vision statement, and then kind of subsequently how that the expectations for each school. What does that look like in each school? And then also how, with the limited amount of resources that we have, how can we actually put that into practice, or how do we help teachers with the resources we have achieve the goals as stated in the vision statement, as said in the vision statement?
Yeah, I think overall we need more PD, it sounds like, and more hardware, more devices for our students in our school and in our district.
And done.
And scene.